Okay, so it's been probably a week since I've put out a video. I'm just going to um, have a quick update on where I am and some of the things that are coming up uh, for me personally, and therefore so in the collective, if not now, in the very near future. Um, so The first thing I want to touch on is a topic that I did do a video on, but I did not put it out because it was far too personal, and I was still kind of dealing and reeling with it. So I've been very busy lately doing some painting and small projects around the house to increase the potential for buyer approval, right? Um, and One of the things was I had a motorcycle stored here that belonged to a family member of my ex. And I reached out to the family and said, I'm selling the house and moving, and that needed him to come get this motorcycle. And so I was in communication with him, and it was very bittersweet. He came to get the motorcycle. Every time we exchanged a text message, or even every time I allowed myself to think about the situation and all things surrounding that, um, I was moved uh, moved to a place, an emotional place that was less than pleasant. Um, and I really had to sit and look at all of that, all of all of those emotions that are still attached to that situation, that breakup, um, the resentments that I maybe less today because I've been looking at it, but resentments that I have been holding surrounding the breakup. And I've mentioned that in videos before when, I asked for the man to help pay for the credit card debt that had been created by us. You know, he he deemed it was not his responsibility, as as is the puppy that I still have outside that is registered to him that needs a home. Um, and so when the family member came to get the motorcycle that was stored here, uh, my ex had asked him to ask about some things that he wanted. And so even still in my countenance, I'm sure you can see my ego's speaking. My ego's talking there. Yeah. Um, so I've had the ability to look at this and to kind of hash that out. So things that were purging at this time, coming to, understand that we have this adult responsibility to look at why we feel the way we do about a certain anything, and to be mindful of not justifying bad behavior, or justifying bad behavior in light of a certain situation. So, and then too, what else came up in that scenario was some of the stuff that, well, that the man had asked for was already gone. The refuse guy had come and taken them. You know, uh, they had sat here for, so the separation, the split occurred in March, and they sat here until halfway through October. The spring, summer months would have been the time to be using these things. And I pretty much figured that I assumed that new had been purchased and they had been replaced. But it makes no difference. I was cleaning out the basement, and so they got taken out with the rest of the stuff. So there may have been a little bit of, not guilt, because I didn't feel guilty about that, but what I think I may have felt was a little bit of that I was going to be judged or perceived a certain way because I had gotten rid of these things. And again, that's to be as blunt as I can be. That's not my problem. And I need to realize that if someone wants to judge, if someone wants to condemn, they will find reason to do that. We find what we seek. And so if someone wants to make an enemy of someone, they will find a reason and a validation and justification for that label. So, these things came up for me. It was a very emotional weekend last weekend when this occurred, and even somewhat the weekend before when the family member and I had been in text communication about the motorcycle. So that happened. What I realized through it was that if I can, when I can, completely align to the truth that I know is, which is all of these things happen for my highest good. I have called them to me for a reason. I have called these experiences to me for my own growth and learning. And that if I don't like it, if I don't like the situation, I can choose to do something about it, but I truly have no one to blame. But myself, if that be the case, and even that's not going to benefit me. So, for example, and I had stated this in a previous video, if I didn't like the fact that, okay, just from my purview, from my perspective, he refused to help pay this debt off, right? And though he had this credit card, which was in his name, the account was in my name. So I had issued him a credit card on my account. So my choice was, do I want to sit and go down through all of these charges and try to decipher which ones were his, which ones were mine? Do I really want to involve myself in that process mentally, emotionally, yada, 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 right? I was asking him for a very small amount of money. I think I was asking him for like $5,000. $3,500 of that I had just given him months before our split for so he could go out and buy a vehicle with cash, which I later found out through the insurance company that he had purchased a brand new vehicle. And so where did that vehicle go? I had just given him this $3,500 to buy. So, if I'm really that upset about that loss of money, what perceive or seems to be a loss of money, I could sit down and itemize all these things. I could take him to court. I could do that. I don't have any motivation or inclination to do that. I don't want to. Now, if I don't want to sit down and do this and go to court and, then I need to ask myself why. Well, one of the reasons I don't want to is because I don't want to see this person. I don't want to see this person. I feel like it would be more traumatic to have to see him than this loss, financial loss. Okay. I also see that because of our split, when I stand back and look, before that, I don't think I ever would have considered selling my home and moving. And because that's the path I'm on now, this is what I've been told I'm doing and inspired by spirit to do. I see that these things had to happen the way they did. And, it added to the momentum or motivation to make these changes. So that's really interesting. It's really interesting how that happened as well. And all of this is factoring in and playing a part, right? So I can see that. But the adult responsibility is that this is how it is. I did attract this to myself for the reason that I did, for my learning. And even if I don't see it or understand it in this moment, hopefully the lesson was learned. There are quite a few things that I will not repeat going forward. So what I know, the truth is that the moment that I can truly wish the very happiest, best life for this man, my ex, the moment that I can do that, I'm free. I'm absolutely free of it, of all of it. I am then free to be happy myself. So, unfortunately, in this moment, there's still a lot of pain. There's still a lot of hurt there. And I'm surprised by that because it's been 7 months. So I'm really surprised that hurt is still there, but it is. And so I'm not quite there yet. I can speak the words, I wish the best for him, but there is a bit of a twinge. My ego still has a lot of tentacles in all of that. Not willing to let go completely of that hurt, that pain, those feelings, right? So emotions, ideas and beliefs. So until that happens, that's, I'm doing the best I can with it. But also not beating myself up over it and allowing it to be. All right, so that brings us to this point. So today I'm reading, I was reading in the Book of Freedom, and this is a channeled text. It is channeled by Paul Selig, author of I Am the Word. And this is the Mastery Trilogy. This is book number 3, okay? And it's called the Book of Freedom. So I was reading in that. I bounce around quite a bit. And as I'm reading this, I very rarely have questions. And I know that if I would just ask the question, I would get the answer. But I so rarely have questions that it's interesting. But so as I'm reading this text, I was like, okay, let me look at what's going on in my experience right now. So I wrote down a question. How do I find the job/career that is most joyful and prosperous for me? And the answer that was coming before I even finished writing the question was, I will be guided to it in the time appropriate. So diplomatic. Okay, and the next one. How do I receive the best price for this property? And the answer is, follow the guidance as you are given, which has already occurred. Certain things, it's like our first showing. We had our first showing, and it was really discouraging. Now, it's interesting that it was discouraging because you could, on another day, maybe I wouldn't have thought it discouraging. I would have been just like, oh, well, they can think anything they want, right? But on this day, I found it very discouraging, and I was really not happy about it. And so I asked the question mentally. I asked the question, what can I do about this? Right? And the answer that I received at that time was that I was to make it look like I'd never lived here. The answer that I received was that a lot of the people that are coming to see the property are wanting like new construction. They want it to look like it's brand new. Well, this property, the main house, is 150, 160 years old. So, okay. So what I thought was, what came to me was, I'll do some painting. I enjoy painting anyway, so I'll do some painting. And I was doing that. I have been, today is my first half a day off. Up until today, I was painting probably at least 10 hours a day. More than burning the midnight oil. We're talking 1:30, 2 a.m. quit time, and then get back up at 9 and start over. So but today we had another showing, and so I had a hard deadline, and I was like, well, whatever I accomplish up to this point, and then I'm gonna clean, because I can't have people walking through here with wet paint. Okay, the dog already got her butt in it, and she brushed up against the wall with her butt and got paint on her butt. So I was like, okay, enough is enough. So my son and I took the second half of the day off, and I sat in a chair and I napped, and I napped a lot, and I'm doing some reading, and my body needs the rest. So it's good. So and it's really funny because the next question I asked was, before I even got it completely written on the paper, I was getting commentary, okay? And it was funny because I don't really have much of a sense of humor, that I think. I guess I have a sense of humor. It's just different than many. That's at least what I've been told. So I start, the question comes into my mind, and I'm getting ready to write it, and already there's commentary happening. So my question was, is there something I must know or do now/tomorrow? ? And the answer that I wrote was, listen for guidance by your motivation. Listen for guidance by your motivation. But what I heard first was, what would it matter? What would it matter? You are tired. And so, that was, I thought that was funny. And there was a lot of kind of laughter, almost like, making fun at the same time. They were like, why are you even asking us this? You're tired. You have already made the decision that you need a break, you need a rest. So why even ask, right? But that was the answer, how do I want to say that? The definitive answer was, listen for guidance by your motivation. And then I put a smiley face after, because that was the whole feel of that answer, was like very laughing and like, why are you asking? So further on, as I sat with that, what I was receiving was, just listen. Stop trying to make things happen and allow them to happen. Okay. So then from there, from that place, I see the whole world, right? I see the chaos. I see the contention. I see the things that are going on out there and the stories that are playing out. And what I see underlying all of it is that intense desire to control. To control. And I realized this is how I have participated in the events that are playing out on our planet. Because even on the level of individuality in this experience, I have aided the collective in this creation of this In my mind right now, I'm seeing the devil card in tarot, which is the machine. Because I have steampunk cards, the machine that has just gotten out of control. So it is a need that you just can't feed it fast enough. It is just sucking all of the life out of everything. And so what is really interesting is just to be getting that information, taking that step back and seeing how, in my experience, this, what I am as a point of attention of the divine expression of God in this moment, right? How I have aided in this reality, even on the level of trying to make things happen in my life. And as I look at even my last relationship, right? I made it happen. I made it happen by seeing it the way I needed to see it to believe it was real. It wasn't. But I am now able to see that I wanted it to be real, even if it wasn't. And I made it so until I could no longer keep up I could no longer feed the machine. I had nothing left. Okay? So it was like I saw what I wanted to see for as long as I could. And then I just could not deny the truth any longer. That is where we are, right? That is where we are as a collective on this planet. That the untruth has gotten so big and so massive and so vulgar that it just cannot be, the untruth cannot be denied anymore. And so it's really funny how when we're going through these experiences, we have that ability, if we choose to take it, to take that step back and see how this affects everything else, okay? And even in the sale of my home, right? Even in the sale of this property, this morning as I was cleaning, finished the painting, not finished, but finished where I was going to stop for the showing. And I was doing some cleanup, and what I heard, or the message that I received, was, and it just kind of came in. It wasn't like I was thinking of anything, save it be prepping for this upcoming showing. And what the message I got was, be mindful of accepting too low an offer. Be mindful that should you accept too low an offer, you are also influencing every property in your area, okay? And it was something that I had not thought of before, because this is how this works. Comps. What another property sells for affects the value of the other properties around it and in the nearby neighborhoods. So if I get an offer for my property and it's a lowball offer and I take it, I am also then affecting the values of the other properties around me. And I have to be mindful of that. And it's really interesting that I received that message this morning, that I'm reading this text, that all this has happened now. I'm asking these questions. I'm giving the guidance to say, stop trying to make things happen and allow them to happen, which sent me down the path of seeing the control in my own life, or my attempts to control, my attempts to produce, my attempts to create that which I want without seeing what's really there, and how that's playing out in what seems to be our reality as well. Because, you know, the microcosm and the macrocosm, and as above, so below. It all means the same thing. As it is working in our lives, it is working in the collective or on the planetary level. So I find that really interesting. Unless, okay, there's the caveat, right? Unless we are vibrating at a high enough level that we have then become above these influences. And so, and I do, that it must be true, because it just came from Spirit. It must be true that is the case, that we can align ourselves to that higher level where we are no longer influenced by what's happening in the life of someone else. And it is such because we perceive the things that come our way, and we perceive it so differently that choices become available to us, options become available to us that we had never even conceived of before when we were processing on this lower level. Because on that lower level, we are restricted in our creativity. So I find that really interesting. So the higher, you know, when we align to the higher, which is that higher level consciousness, super consciousness, Christ consciousness, spirit consciousness, the Holy Spirit, however you see it, we align to that wisdom that comes from knowledge or knowing. When we align to that, doors and windows open everywhere that we didn't even know there was a window or a door there. We saw it before as a solid wall, and now it has become a door. But the door was always there. And that's the interesting part. The door was always there. We perceived it as a wall, right? So just touching base on what's going on right now in my personal experience, my point of attention, and hoping that this message finds you all well, and in peace and love. May you be blessed.